Hi everyone, Heather here with astrologywithheather.com, and I am back with another weekly forecast. And this one is for Monday, April 19th, all the way through to Sunday, April 25th of 2021. And this week we have a lot of movement in the astrology. We have Mercury and the Sun moving into the sign of Taurus, where they will join with Venus and Uranus to form a stellium. And this entire stellium will be squaring off to Saturn in Aquarius. So what does this all mean? It means that we're in for a shakeup in communication, a shakeup in our relationships, and a shakeup overall in the area of our lives that's being impacted by these transits and will be impacted by this energy of Saturn and Uranus throughout this entire year. It's already started, it's already begun, it's being highlighted, and it's going to continue to carry on all the way through 2021. And this is not a shakeup that's necessarily negative. It's going to liberate us from something that we've been needing to liberate ourselves from, something that's become dull or stagnant or too settled. But it's also not going to feel comfortable, especially in the moment, especially as we were in the midst of changing things up, of pivoting, of adjusting, of making these big dramatic moves and changes that are going to have really long-lasting impacts because Saturn is involved. And that's kind of the main energy here, that Saturn-Uranus energy. Uranus requires that we break out of our comfort zones, that we change something that we thought was going to be really fixed and really stable in our lives in order to liberate ourselves from the energy that's holding us back from reaching our true potential. But on the opposite end, Saturn is not letting us do that all willy-nilly. It's not letting us do that quickly. And in fact, Saturn might be bringing up frustrations or challenges or unexpected hurdles this week that will cause us to have to make these changes that maybe we're not willing to make for ourselves because we've become too comfortable, too set in our ways. And so that's the big energy for this week. But before we get into that, I just want to mention, for those who are new to my channel, please like my channel, subscribe to the channel, because I always do a weekly forecast every single Saturday at 9 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, and you don't want to miss an important astrology update, especially coming into the next few weeks and into next month. We're coming into eclipse season, we're coming into Jupiter, moving into Pisces, so it's big energy. And then even if you're not new to my channel, the way that I structure my videos is I always start with a 5 to 10 minute general forecast. Don't skip this. This is going to provide an important context for the energy we'll be describing in detail in the all signs forecast that's going to be more personalized for you. Speaking of which, when we get to the forecast for all 12 signs, make sure that you listen to your rising sign, your sun sign, and your moon sign to get a more holistic, comprehensive overview of the energy for your week ahead. The rising sign will be the most predominant energy. The sun sign will be secondary, and the moon sign is important to listen to as well, although this will be a more internalized and subjective influence. And for those of you who want to go even deeper in understanding what I'm talking about in my free tutorials and in my weekly forecasts, I have a free Astrology 101 guide. It's a quick reference guide that will help to give you the understanding that you need to make even more of my free content here on YouTube. The link to download that is down in the description below. Finally, at the end of each video, I do a 2 to 3 minute overview of next week's forecast so you can be even farther ahead in planning and understanding what's to come. And so stick around to the end if you're interested in that. So let's kind of get back into the general forecast here. So the peak energy this week is actually going to be coming in the later half of the week. So we have on Monday, that's when we're going to start feeling this, right? Because we have Mercury and we have the Sun shifting into the sign of Taurus, which is highlighting that energy of the Uranus-Saturn square, which was really, really intensified at the start of this year in January, really at the start of January. So around the 5th and the 6th, it really shifted in there. So in January and into February, this was being highlighted because there was a stellium on the opposite end of this square in the sign of Aquarius. We also had the very first pass of the Uranus-Saturn square exact, which is not the exact same that we're having right now. So it's not an exact square. It's still very, very close, and it's still very, very intensified. But we'll see a lot of the themes, a lot of the frustrations, a lot of the changes that came up at the start of the year come back around or come full circle this week. And it probably has already started, because this is not something that just happens, within a couple of days when we're talking about these big, massive, long-term transits. This is something that we've already been experiencing. We've been feeling this new chapter that's beginning in our lives, this need to change something that first came up at the start of the year. And so this is a time where we're going to have to revisit the energy of what was set in motion, revisit the energy of the frustrations that we were experiencing that caused us to think for the very first time about changing things or moving in a certain direction that maybe we've never moved into before. And this is a time where it's going to be highlighted on the Uranus end. And so while at the beginning of the year, it was more about taking your time and putting things off and making sure your ducks were in a row before you made those changes that need to happen more gradually in a very responsible and sustainable way. We have to think about the future, right? We have to think in the sign of Aquarius with Saturn in its traditional home sign in Aquarius. We're thinking about how we can build something that's long withstanding that will impact not just us, but future generations, and how that will impact not just us, but all of humanity and future generations. This isn't something to take lightly with that Saturn energy, and we really have to make sure that the changes we're making are appropriate and that we understand what the long-term ramifications of what it is we're setting into motion might be. So we're not just planning for the here and now. We're not just making changes because we feel frustrated or we want to shake things up or we're feeling stagnant. We're making changes because we want a better future for the long haul. And that is one of the most important things that's happening this year and one of the most important points that I want to make in this forecast. So because it's on the Uranian side, we might actually be feeling like we want to just jump in and go all in and change everything all at once, a complete overhaul of our systems, of our lives, of our relationships, of our experiences. But that is not necessarily the best route to take for most people. Again, this is going to be specific to how this is impacting you individually and all of your birth chart placements. Some of you might need to make changes right this second, but for kind of the general energy, it's about if you do have to make these changes right now, how is that going to impact you several months, several years, several decades down the road? That's what we should really be thinking about. It's not just about short-term gratification. And in the fixed signs, and especially in Taurus, we're going to be more likely to be thinking that way, but there could just be frustrations that it's like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. I need to just, I need to do it. I need to change it. And so I want to make sure that everybody's thinking things through. But this is also a week where Mercury is conjunct Uranus. So we have that Venus-Uranus conjunction on Thursday exact, which is going to be disturbing our equilibrium, disturbing our status quo. But because Venus is a benefic planet, it's in its home sign in Taurus, I do feel like this is going to be a positive change that's coming, even if it is a little disruptive or a little destabilizing, right? So this is going, and all change is disruptive and destabilizing. So, I mean, that's just what it is. But in Taurus, we might not want that, right? Taurus wants to stay the same, be comfortable. So we have that energy on Thursday. And then on Saturday, Mercury is coming into a conjunction with Uranus. And so pretty much throughout the entire end part of this week, Mercury is coming into that conjunction with Uranus and with Venus. And this is a time when we can have really incredible insights, downloads, flashes of information. This is a genius energy, and the genius is actually expressed or reflected in our relationships with other people. And so this is a really good time to communicate, to collaborate. This is a really great time to connect with other people and brainstorm, or connect with groups of people and brainstorm, because the results you're going to get when you do something in collaboration with somebody else, or when you're actually taking into account the needs or assessing the needs of other people, it's going to be much more fruitful and much more beneficial. And this energy is really building up to next week, which we'll talk about at the end of this video, because all of this is going to be highlighted by a really intense full moon in the sign of Scorpio. I talked about this in the Cosmic Community New Moon Gathering, where we set our intentions and then go through the energy for the entire month ahead, or the entire lunar month ahead. And, that was something I really focused on, because next week it's really hitting its peak. So the energy is starting to peak. At the end of this week, we'll start to feel it. We'll start to feel that frustration build, that intensity. And then, coming into next week, it'll be like, so just to forewarn you there. And so again, stick around to the end of the video if you want to learn more about that. But let's get into the forecast for all 12 signs, beginning of course with Aries and Aries rising. And before we get into that, I do just have a couple of very quick announcements. As I mentioned before, I have an Astrology 101 guide to help guide you through what the heck we're talking about in these tutorials and in these weekly forecasts. It covers things like the general significations of the planets, the zodiac zodiac signs, the houses. It covers planetary aspects. It gives you the key to all of the glyphs, those little symbols that I pull up here on my screen, like that one which is for Aries. And so some of you have asked if I could put like words and things like that up there. But you guys can actually learn about the glyphs and get some astrology education through that guide completely free of charge. The link is down in the description below. It covers a little bit more than that, but it's a really great tool to help you to navigate the free content that I'm giving here. It answers a lot of the questions that I get in the comment section. And also my Cosmic community. So I have a membership community that's not just a normal membership community. It's actually guided by the community. So it's community guided, astrologer led, and we're going to be doing a new webinar at the end of May. Our community members are voting on that right now. It looks like it's going to be about paranormal experiences and psychic abilities in astrology. That seems to be the number one so far, but we'll see. I'm doing a whole new series on medical astrology. I'm doing a series on the age-related cycles and transits, beginning with childhood transits. We have a new series about how to learn more information about each of the planets in your chart, and it provides unique information that you're not going to get anywhere else. There's so much going on, and we do our monthly new moon gatherings. We do our monthly Q&A where you can ask personal questions, and I can answer them astrologically. It's actually a lot of fun, and so if you want to connect with like-minded people who are interested in astrology, if you want to learn on a more practical level, usable information that you can harness in your everyday experience, the link for the Cosmic community is down in the description below. And so let's get into the forecast for all 12 signs, beginning, of course, with Aries and with Aries rising. So for Aries, financial shakeup. Money is on your mind. There is a need to change something financially. There could even be a new financial opportunity coming in, but there could be something that's preventing it from moving forward as quickly as you want to, or that's delaying it in some way. Or it could be that there's a challenge that comes up that causes you to have to pivot or make some sort of financial change that brings greater independence financially. It could also be that you want to do something that's more unique, that's more outside of the box with your finances. So it could be making like a really strange or unique purchase that's going to benefit you in the long term, or a really unique or different type of investment that's going to benefit you in the long term. Or it could actually very literally be you finding a unique, more independent way of creating resources for yourself, generating revenue, generating income. And so that's going to be a big thing for Aries. Don't let your friends discourage you, but take their concerns seriously, because Saturn in the 11th house, that's kind of where there's a little bit of a hang up. It could even be for you guys that you want to do something really new financially. You want to maybe start some sort of weird business or invest in something that's strange or outside of the box. And your friends are like, what the heck are you doing? And, that could slow you down. Don't take the criticism too hard. Take it into account, because they might be right. Maybe you're rushing into things, but also if it's just like, that's super weird. I mean, you have to kind of weigh like their opinion and how much that actually is relevant. So that could be kind of the stalling out point, or the hurdle that you're facing is like, what are my friends going to think about what I'm doing financially, or about this financial situation or disruption that just came up? And so, but that's going to be for Aries. So expect the unexpected. When it comes to your finances this week, there could be new opportunities coming up, but there could also be new stressors and new hurdles that cause you to have to pivot. For Taurus and for Taurus rising. So for Taurus, this energy is happening in your sign. So this is a very disruptive energy for a lot of Taurus, Taurus rising, Taurus moon signs. Even if you have like a stellium of other planets in Taurus, you'll be feeling this really intensely. And so this is where you're going to be really feeling like you need to change something. You're feeling out of balance. You're feeling off kilter. You're wanting to indulge in your comfort zones. You're wanting to do the things that feel good. But at the same time, there's this contradictory energy where it's like, I feel like I'm doing what I want to do, but I also hate it. And I'm feeling really bored, really stuck, really frustrated, and really stagnant. And this could also be the case when it comes to your work. You've been working really hard on building a new name for yourself, building something really substantial that's going to benefit you for the long term, for the next 20 to 30 years in the sign of Aquarius, in your 10th house. And you could be feeling frustrated with the progress or the lack of progress in your perspective. There could be literally like a manager or a boss who puts a halt to your plans, or something along those lines. Also, relationships involving coworkers or involving bosses, employees, employers, all of that could be disrupted this week. And your relationships in general, this literally is going to be impacting you in all areas. So your personal path, your personal identity is changing pretty dramatically. You're acting completely outside of the norm, and people are noticing that and maybe commenting on that. Your career is feeling like you need to rebuild or restructure or start something new, but it's taking a little bit of extra work to make that happen. In your home life, it could be the same thing. There could be a change you want to make involving your home, your family, your property, and that's kind of a similar situation. It's like 2 steps forward and then 1 step back and then 1 step sideways because you have to change. And the same thing goes for your relationships. So this is really hitting Taurus in the foundational areas of your life and chart. And so you're going to be feeling a little flustered, I would say, this week. All right. And then for Gemini and for Gemini rising. So for Geminis, this is actually happening in your 12th house. This is actually a little bit of a nicer energy for Gemini because Saturn is actually trining your ascendant, sun, or moon. Jupiter's there too, especially if you're an N degree Gemini. But this is an energy where whatever it is that you're destabilizing, whatever it is that you're letting go of, whatever it is that you're changing in secret behind closed doors, behind the scenes, is going to impact you when it comes to the overall structure of your life, your goals, your orientation, your experience, your direction in a way that's going to be very solid, very grounding, and very long lasting, where you're going to be connecting yourself more fully and completely to your ideals, to your morality, to your ethical values, to your philosophical and religious belief systems and values. Basically, you're aligning yourself very slowly and very methodically in your everyday overall experience with your integrity. And that's hugely important. But there's a lot that you have to kind of sort through and let go of from your past and from past cycles in order to make that a reality. All right. And then for Cancer and for Cancer rising. So for Cancers, this is happening in your 11th house, which is the house of friends, social networks, people that you surround yourself with because you want to. And this is actually a really great energy for Cancer in terms of socializing, in terms of meeting new people. You could have new opportunities that come to you very unexpectedly this week and even into next week that come through your connections, your social networks, that come through networking for business purposes, if that's something that's applicable to you, or networking for investment purposes, because Saturn's on the opposite end in the 8th house. Just know that even though this is impacting you personally, and you could even have a new relationship come in, friendship, love, or otherwise, even though that's there is the potential for power struggles. There is the potential for past trauma, past fears, addictions, sort of compulsive behaviors to get in the way of you really honing in on and harnessing these new, really exciting outside of the box opportunities. And so you want to keep that in mind and just make sure that you're taking hold of what's necessary while the energy is here. But also, there is the need to consider the long-term implications. And so if the networking you're doing, if the connections you're making are business related or are financial, you want to make sure that you're really understanding the long-term financial consequences of what it is that you're setting in motion. Okay, and then for Leo and for Leo rising. So for Leos, this energy is happening in your 10th house of career and public reputation. And so this is where you're probably feeling kind of frustrated this week with what's going on in your career and in kind of the public sphere. You're wanting to change something. You're wanting to start something brand new career-wise. But there are past relationships, past connections, past contracts, past agreements, past business negotiations or business partnerships that are maybe preventing you from launching all in. It could even be that people in relationship with you are kind of naysayers, or they're, not necessarily on board, and they're making you doubt yourself and hesitate. And that could be a part of this too. There is a need to take that into account though. Like, don't throw away your contracts. Don't throw away your negotiations. Don't throw away your agreements that you already have with people in favor of this brand new thing all at once. This needs to be a slow and steady process where where you're building off of what you already have. And also, don't just like throw away other people's opinions or their input, even if it is harsh or even if it is burdensome or even if it is weighing you down, because they might be doing that for a reason, because there's a need to take into account the long-term consequences. If you're launching into something brand new, super weird, super outside of the box, when it comes to your career, there might be a need to slow down and consider the ramifications of this. And other people might be pointing that out to you this week. And so they're not just there to burden you. They're there to bring that Saturnian energy to life, right? They're there to play that devil's advocate, or that, I guess not devil's advocate, but they're there to be Saturn, right? To be your teacher, to be the one that says, stop, slow down, wait. But that being said, I mean, this is a really great time for you to consider. I mean, you're going to have to change something with your career for Leo risings. Like, that's just part of this experience and part of what's going on here. And it's just going to have to be something that you're going to have to consider the long-term ramifications of, and do so responsibly. You might have a lot of ideas and new connections coming in career-wise this week, and definitely take hold of the opportunities that come, so long as you're doing so very mindfully. All right, and then for Virgo and for Virgo rising. So for Virgo, this energy is happening actually in your 9th house. So this is a great week for Virgos. Although there can be some frustration or some delays or some burdens in your everyday experience with your work, with your health, with just overall your day-to-day mundane routine types of energies. So basically the 6th house rules everything that we have to do on a day-to-day basis to sustain and maintain our existence in the physical reality, in the physical realm. It's how we express ourselves through our careers. It's how we make money. It's how we take care of our bodies. It's how we feed ourselves, all of that. And that part of it, the mundane maintenance, might feel like it's preventing you from launching all into this big opportunity or this big vision that you have for yourself, or this big new adventure, or this big new travel opportunity too. That could be something that's going on here. Like, you might be wanting to get out there to teach, to speak, to travel, to do things more publicly. You might want to start a new educational program or pursuit, or teach a new educational program or pursuit. And Saturn's like, you got a lot of stuff to do here, but you can make it happen. Just make sure you don't neglect yourself. Make sure you don't neglect the things that you need to do every day. And this is actually going to be impacting you very positively. So if you are a Virgo sun, moon, or rising, really anywhere within the first 15 degrees, this is impacting you in a very good way. You're changing who you are. You're changing what you're doing out in the world. You're changing your path in a very gradual, liberating, really exciting way. And you're going to learn some really beneficial new information this week. So keep an eye out for that, or keep your mind ready to incorporate these new ideas as they come to you. For Libra and for Libra rising. So for Libras, this is happening in your 5th and in your 8th house. And so, for Libras, this is going to be a little bit more troublesome than, maybe for some other signs, just because this is happening in your 8th house. And the 8th house is considered a malefic house in traditional astrology because it's associated with things that are maybe not so fun. So the 8th house, of course, is associated with debt. It's associated with taxes. It's associated with death and transformation. It's associated with your partner's resources as well. But it's basically overall associated with power and control issues. It's associated with addictions and compulsions. It's associated with psychological traumas and things that kind of lie beneath the surface and control your behavior from the inside out. It's also associated with occult studies and things like that too. So like magic and things that are a little bit more taboo. And so all of these things could be activated for you. You might have a really great idea, or you might be opened up to new opportunities and new information in that realm of the occult sciences. It could also be that you're opened up to new opportunities and new information when it comes to investments, when it comes to the way that you utilize your resources, the way that you bring in outside income, not through your work, but through other sources. There could also be a disruption coming involving taxes, involving insurance payouts, involving inheritance. It could be that, you get a letter from the IRS or something along those lines, and that puts a little bit of a damper in your plans and you have to pivot. For some Libras, this could actually represent some sort of financial dispute involving child support or involving your children and like the other parent of your children. And so that could be putting a hurdle in your big plans and goals financially. And this could also just be stirring up some Anxiety. I feel like this is kind of an anxious energy or an unsettled energy for Libra, where your past experiences, past traumas, past fears might be triggered in some way. It doesn't mean that they're coming back around and you're going to have that experience again, but there's something familiar that's coming into the mix that's triggering that restless energy, and you're having to figure out how to work with that and heal through that. For Scorpio and for Scorpio rising. So for Scorpios, this is happening in your 7th house of relationships. Lots of new contracts, lots of new agreements, lots of new relationships coming into the mix, lots of changes in your current relationships, a whole bunch of like emails, text messages, phone calls. You're going to be very busy kind of going back and forth with people over the next couple of weeks. There's going to be a lot of communication, and especially on that one-on-one basis or on that contractual basis. And that could also be involving your home, your family, your property, or your family members. Or it could be that your home, your family, your property, and your family members are inhibiting you from going all in when it comes to these new opportunities in relationship. If that's the case, pay attention to it. You have to make sure that your foundations, when it comes to what's going on behind the scenes, are all squared away, and that you're building the right foundations for yourself in terms of your home and your living situation in order to create what you want to create with these new relationships, with these new connections. It could even be that you meet someone new, or you're ready to introduce a new partner to your family, and they're like, no, like they're not into it, or they don't like that person, or they have something negative to say. If that's the case, don't let them completely stop you from engaging or jumping in or being in that relationship. But you also have to take into consideration their criticisms. Saturn rules criticism, by the way. It's not just Virgo. Saturn itself has a strong association with criticism in the birth chart and in transit. And that's like a whole nother thing. But that Saturnian energy, it could be that they're doing it for a reason, and part of what they're saying is truthful, and it's something that you need to consider for the long term. So don't completely throw it away, but don't let them discourage you if they are just kind of like hating on your partner or hating on, whatever it is that you're moving forward with. But this could literally just be you making some sort of massive change involving a contract negotiation or an agreement involving your home or your property, and it's something that you really have to consider the long-term implications of. For Sagittarius and Sagittarius rising. So for Sagittarius, this energy is happening in your 6th house, which is the house of work, health, and daily routines. There could be a lot of disruption this week in the realm of not just your work in general, but your relationships with your coworkers, your workflow. There could be disruptions to your work schedule that are unexpected. There could be unexpected communications that come in through your work that kind of delay things or cause you to have to change or pivot in some way. This could also be you just wanting to break free. You're like, oh my gosh, I need freedom from this mundane day-to-day experience in my work. I need to change something with my work life so overall I can be more liberated and have much more freedom moving forward. Now's the time where this is going to pick up some momentum. It's been going on for a while, but now it's really highlighted this week and really for the next couple of weeks. And Saturn is just making sure through communication. So people might literally communicate to you their hesitations, or you could be reading something or getting some sort of new information that shows you how much work this really is and what the long-term implications really will be when you make these changes. And so if that's the case, take it to heart. Don't let it discourage you, but make sure that you're taking to heart the information and communication that's coming in, especially through partnerships, because this is going to be really good for you. This is where the good end is. It's like, hey, take into consideration the long term. Yes, day to day is frustrating right now, but there's a goal here in mind and there's a way out. You just have to really put the work in and put the effort in. And if you're okay with doing the work, then yes, this is something that you can launch into. All right, so for Capricorn and for Capricorn rising. So for Capricorn, this energy is happening in your 5th house, which is nice. So there's a lot of really positive energy around making changes, involving your children, involving your hobbies, your interests, your passion pursuits. This is a time where you might discover new passions. You might discover new exciting things that you want to engage with and incorporate into your everyday life and experience, or maybe even turn into something profitable, because that's the energy of the square to Saturn. The profitable part of this is going to be the part that's going to be a lot of hard work. So this is the house of entrepreneurship. This is the house of taking something that you love, your passion, and running with it. But that Saturnian component is like, is the money there? Are people willing to pay for this? How is this going to impact your finances long term? Are you going to have to tighten your belt quite a bit? Or is this something that you can really sustain? And maybe taking it slow instead of jumping all the way in when it comes to converting that into something, financial. It could also be that you want to just do something really fun and exciting and new, and you're like, I'm ready, but maybe it's going to put a damper on your finances. It's going to cost some money. It could also be that you want to engage in something new and exciting involving your children or for your children. And again, that financial component is something you really have to think through and consider. For Aquarius and for Aquarius rising. So for Aquarius, this energy is happening in your 4th house, which is the house of home, family, property, real estate. I feel like for Aquarius, a few things are going to be happening for a lot of Aquarius people. And I already know that this is happening, especially for Aquarius risings. But there's a need to change something about your home life and your home environment. You're going to be feeling very frustrated with either your family dynamic or your living situation or something involving a property. A lot of you will be moving. A lot of you will be thinking about moving or rearranging or renovating your home. A lot of you will be thinking about adding new people, adding new components to your home life, your family, your situation. And that could be in the form of a pet. But I would say with Saturn transiting through the 1st house, if this was like an individual person's chart, especially a female that I was looking at, and it was somebody who wanted to have children, I would say that you could potentially have a planned pregnancy that comes in an unexpected way or something along those lines. So there's definitely some energy around taking on a new responsibility when it comes to your home and family, and taking on a new identity and a new responsibility on a personal level. And that could come through that, or it could come through unexpectedly having visitors that you have to kind of account for and take care of and play host to. It could come through having unexpected, like coming into having like a new pet or a new addition to the home in that way. Sometimes this comes through like having to take care of a parent or having a family member move in or something like that, or having to move in with a family member. So those types of things could be a part of this as well. But in general, you're just thinking about shaking things up and changing things when it comes to your home, but you really have to think of the long-term implications when it comes to how this will impact you personally and the new burdens and responsibilities you'll be taking on as a result of this change. For Pisces and for Pisces rising. So Pisces, you're getting ready to have Jupiter in your sign here in just a couple of weeks, so that's exciting. But for right now, you've got a lot of action in your 3rd house, which is ideas, communication, it's education, it's also your neighbors, your neighborhood, your community, it's also short distance travel, vehicles, things of that nature. And all of these topics are subject to disruption, opportunity, change, discomfort this week, but in a very positive way. So this really seems to me like it's going to impact you more in terms of communication, but it could be that you have an opportunity to buy a new vehicle or to do a short distance trip or something like that, especially if it's a trip that allows you to spend time in reflection and in solitude to really hone in on what you want to let go of moving forward, what patterns no longer are serving you. So maybe like a short trip that has some sort of spiritual implications or contemplative implications, but you're probably going to have too much communication and too much going on in your head to really calm the mind and sit through that, right? So this is also going to be potentially really good, really exciting, really positive communication one-on-one with people. So new partnerships, new collaborations, new relationships could come in this week, and really exciting new communications or new ideas that come through your relationships. So this is a great time to bounce ideas off of other people. This is a great time to learn something brand new and really exciting that shakes things up for you on a mental level, that changes your mindset around things. This is a really great time for you to personally work on changing your mindset and your mental habits, right? That's that 3rd house energy. It's not like the big picture and your overarching beliefs. It's your day-to-day self-talk. And so that's something that you can consider working on and harnessing this energy for as well. But you're going to be just mentally a lot of stimulation this week, and you're going to be having a lot of really new ideas. Keep a journal handy, keep a pen handy, because you're going to want to jot these down. And this is a great time to socialize and connect with people, especially one-on-one, to bounce ideas off of them or to get input, because that's going to be very fruitful for you. All right, and so that is my forecast for all 12 signs. So let's talk a little bit about next week, because this is a big energy, and it's kind of yeah. As I mentioned before, if you're in the cosmic community, you already kind of know a little bit about this, but we'll have a full moon in the sign of Scorpio. So the moon is at its fall in Scorpio. Scorpio is not the best placement for the moon. When the moon is in Scorpio, we feel things very intensely and very passionately, but we don't necessarily want to express our feelings. And so there could be a lot bottled up under the surface that we've been holding on to emotionally that comes all out in the open, right? This is also a time where we see usually a little bit more when it comes to like psychiatric issues and things like that coming to light. I'm not saying that that's going to be the case for every single person. It's just a pattern that happens and that I've noticed. And so if you're somebody who works in the psych ward or in the ER like my husband does, you might see a little bit more of that. This is also a time where, our own psychological issues, our own patterns, our own fears and anxieties, our own past traumas and wounds that are impacting us on an emotional level that we've buried really deep might come up in unexpected ways due to external circumstances that are causing the disruptions that we talked about this week. It might be like all of our fears are finally coming to light around these changes and around these things that we're having to push through and go through and pivot and sort of work on right now. So that's going to be a big part of this energy. On a global sphere, I see this being disruptive, and I see a lot coming out of the woodwork around that time, and we'll get into that a little bit more next week. And this is also literally the day before Pluto, which is the ruler of that full moon in modern Western astrology, stations to go retrograde. When Pluto stations to go retrograde, it's like, for Scorpio risings in particular, and I am a Scorpio rising, so I know this, and Scorpio suns and Scorpio moons, because it's the dispositor of your sun and moon, it can be extra intense, and usually something really significant or of greater importance occurs around that period. And with that full moon amplifying that energy as well, I would say that the fixed signs, and especially Scorpio people, are going to be having some sort of moment of importance or significance. We can talk about that a little bit more next week, but I just wanted to point that out, that is an indicator. And then also the sun conjunct Uranus as a part of this configuration too, coming in next week. This is going to be people just all of a sudden reaching their breaking point emotionally and just making these wild changes all at once. And I do think that this is going to be a period where we might not necessarily take into account the Saturnian component as much, or the Saturnian component might be what's causing us to reach our breaking point. We're too burdened by responsibility. We don't like the current structure, the current paradigm, externally and internally, all of that. So that's what's coming up next week. It'll be a really big one, so don't miss that forecast. So make sure you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so, and make sure that you share this video with your friends, your family, whoever you think could benefit from the information that I provided you for this week. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.